this episode of She is a Leader, I want to introduce you to Taylor Davis, who I actually connected with through Matthew Riven. You guys have seen him twice on the podcast already, through Kimmy Inch, and somehow the online world has done its job, and this beautiful woman has popped up in my Instagram, and we've been chatting for a while, and I finally get to introduce her to you, ladies. Now, let me give you the rundown, ladies. Taylor Davis is known as the Queenmaker. She is the founder of Wildly Satisfied. Can we talk about this name? Right? Yes. Wildly Satisfied is a media platform dedicated to empowering entrepreneurs to create sustainable success through intuitive, feminine-based strategies. Mm-hmm. Yep, everybody listening knows why I got you on the podcast. And you do so through high-touch mentorship, luxury done-for-you services, and soul-steering conversations on the media platform. Taylor helps solopreneurs, CEOs, and thought leaders build feminine-based businesses using intuitive, pleasure-driven strategies that turn their vision into tangible results. Taylor is setting a new standard for business excellence by integrating integrity-based leadership with feminine embodiment and exploring what's possible, pleasurable, and practical. Girl, you're speaking my language. And it has been often in a couple of the last episodes where it's like, universe, I hear you, and the timing of us just connecting, me reaching out, hey, you want to come on the podcast? Because I know what you do, because I've been following you for a while. And then with the whole name shift that's happening in the podcast, that has been happening in the podcast, universe, we are in the flow. Thank you so much for joining me today.
I'm so excited. I love having conversations like this. And so I am ready to dive right in. Let's go deep.
I love the question to often because it brings out different stories that some of my guests might not have talked about. And just because I love to see that transition. What about little Taylor? Did she think she would be in the place you are right now? I know you are in a conversation creator house. I'm not going to call it a content creator house. So I saw that on Instagram. Oh, yeah. And with everything you do you think, did little Taylor know she is going to grow up to be this amazing woman?
Thank you. That's so sweet. No, little Taylor was... I remember being little Taylor and wanting to just read books all the time. I'm a big fantasy reader. I was a writer. At one point I wanted to be a chef. I was just I could be whatever I want to be, that type of thing. But little Taylor was also very sick when she was a child. And so to look back and be oh my God, I love little Taylor, but definitely this being the world's first feminine based media platform where it's all about our style and how we operate and the model in which we are honored, because there's so much in the world, everything in the world that we know is so masculine based. And so no, little Taylor wasn't oh my God, yes, I'm going to be a feminine business owner type of thing. But I will say I was always the little girl who loved strong, powerful, amazing women. Favorite show growing up, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Charmed. It's so funny because I talk to my family now and stuff like that, and they're Taylor, you're just so oh my God, female power, blah, 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 blah. And I'm yeah, you raised me on Sailor Moon, Buffy, Charmed. What did you expect was going to happen?
Oh my God, yes, all of the above. It's yeah, you are going, I probably was a couple years behind because Germany got them all a little bit later. Yeah. But I'm oh yeah, Sailor Moon, the Buffy series, the old one and the new one, and all of it.
Yeah. So I definitely, there was always a part of me that was I understood that women were powerful, and I understood that there was something off in the way that we were existing, and how I also understood that I always talk about the story that I had with my dad, where I understood that people were operating in a way that I was like, yeah, they're not really happy. Like, there's not really, I didn't understand as like a 7-year-old kid why you would go to a job or go to do work or whatever and come home and you're exhausted and all these things. And I remember walking up to my dad, who like is one of the hardest workers I have ever known in my life. And literally walking up to him as like, like 6-7-year-old Taylor who doesn't know really anything. And it's like, Dad, you should get a new job. And he's like, what?
What? Why? Huh?
What? And he's like, well, Taylor, what? And I was like, well, you just don't seem happy. You should be happy. And he's like, well, Taylor, that's not how life works. You go to work, pay your bills.
Talk about a limiting belief, but it's just what you do, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And the funny thing is like, I remember looking at my dad at like 7 years old and being like, no, you should be happy. And then just like walking away.
I freaking love it. Yes. I don't want to say naive, but it's just that personality, that belief when nobody can tell you otherwise.
Yeah.
Oh,
it's very, I love, like my dad taught me so many things. My life taught me so many things. And for me, like the idea that you have to have life a certain way, like you have to live this way. It's stopped so much for me, and watching other people like just be so held down by this belief system or whatever it is. And I'm just like, no, you should just be happy. And I'm being like a kid. Kids know things that adults have forgotten. And it's like, no, you should be happy. It should be that simple. And there's all these belief systems that are coming in the way to stop that from happening. And so, yeah, I just always think about it. And that's where Wildly Satisfied like originates from, not because that name, I knew that when I was a kid, I was like happiness. But as I got older, someone asked me, they were like, I was talking a lot about what I wanted and what I didn't want. And they were like, well, what's the opposite of what you don't want? Like, how do you want to feel? And I was like, wildly satisfied. Like, that's just what came out. And then it went from there. So, yeah.
I love it. I love it. So how did you find your way to embrace, you do a lot with human design, with just in that realm of flow and your personality and aligning and enjoying life. How did you get here? How did Taylor become Taylor of today?
Oh, wow. I feel like there's so much there.
That's the joy of feminine leadership, because it's like, I think all of us bring so many different things into it, where it's not just a 9 to 5. We bring our passion into it. We bring our experience into it. We bring our love into it. So I'm not surprised that your first reaction is there's so much to that.
There is. And it's because, well, everybody's journey, like when you're going through it, all these things add up to you becoming who you are. And I have so much more to go. And so the first thing I thought of is, I was really stuck. I always knew some part of me that was like, cool, I'm going to go and have a life that was different than other people. I never really like resonated with certain lifestyles. So like when I was really sick when I was a kid, I was self-taught and like I was homeschooled a lot. I spent more times in hospitals than I did schools. So when I actually went to school, I was like, I don't understand this. Like, I really did not understand a lot of things. I was like, I don't understand why people are mean to each other. I don't get why we have to work this way. Like, because I would do things differently because my brain worked differently than the math that they showed us in math class. I was like, no, but you can do it this way. And so I've always had that kind of perspective of like, well, I work differently, but we're all going to the same place. So why would I not honor how this person works versus how this person works? And that's the intuitiveness, right? And so as I got older, I was always just curious. Like, I've always been so curious. I went and studied abroad, and that changed my life. I call it like a portal of possibility, because I went to another culture and I saw that they lived, like they worked to live. They didn't live to work. I saw that there was a different way of being, and I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. So one of the beautiful things I do now is I go to other cultures and I'm like, oh yeah, I love this aspect. Let me bring this into my life so I'm more satisfied. I love this aspect, so let me bring this into my life so I'm more satisfied. And I love learning from other cultures and models and ways of being, because it's like, why are we trying to do such hard work when we have a lot of the answers anyway? So becoming who I am, like that was a big part of it, of traveling to another culture. I was in a really toxic job right out of college. I went into college and I was like, yeah, okay, like I can do this, da, 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 and I got my degree, did not do the thing that I thought I was going to do with the degree that I got as it is, and I got into this job out of college and I ended up in a really toxic corporate job and went through the trenches and the war and everything, burned out. And I always knew there was something more. And I was like, no, people make money different than this. I started studying courses, and this was back in like 2016. And I started studying course makers and creators and content. And I was like, oh my God, entrepreneurship. And I started getting into that. And I started freelancing and working. I was in copywriting and marketing, and I'm a big nerd. Like, I'm a really big nerd. So
That's why we get along.
Yeah, like...
Oh God, yes. We should get nerd badges.
I'm down. Yes, 1,000%. I'm fine with wearing a t-shirt or having a tattoo on my forehead, because some people like want to niche down and they're like, I'm a copywriter and I'm doing this thing. And I was a copywriter, but I was like, no, but I want to learn about YouTube. I want to learn about production. I want to learn about photography. I want to do this. And so like my fascinations fueled me. And so all of that led to, I always had the part of me growing up where, when you're in love with Buffy and Charmed and like, you just feel this essence and you grow up and you're like, I want to do something with this. And that side of like looking at women and the feminine, I learned about feminine energy and I learned about human design and like, how do we honor each other and how we intuitively operate and go, wow, like as the feminine, we do this differently. So why can't we just all work together in our different ways to be able to honor how each of us operates and then build amazing businesses and amazing cultures where we can all be wildly satisfied by honoring how we operate intuitively. And like, that's the world I want to create. So I decided to create it.
Oh, I love it. What do you think is the unique power of female leadership?
Let me start by saying that, and this is like feminine energy and female individuals are probably the most powerful beings on this planet. And this isn't just like oh my God, girl power. No.
We create life. We can create life.
Yes.
If we choose to do so.
And let me say this, like everything in the blueprint of who we are as let's just say like the female body, right? We are aligned with nature, like everything in the world is actually set up to honor the female. We align, like our menstrual cycles are with the moon. We go by seasons and we operate inside of seasons. Like on a bigger scale, we match more of how the environment and how the world operates than what we've been taught in terms of masculine. And so not only on top of that, like that's just like a belief system that we've had ingrained in us and it's really not working. And it's like, cool, if we can get back to, hey, we actually operate more intuitively with how life works and how everything in nature works, we can honor that. And then on top of that, we can have more individualized version of this. But what I want to say is like the female leader and what we bring, yes, we can create life, but creating life is not just creating another human being. Creativity is birthing something into life in a way that can transform the world. And not to say that men can't do that. It's just a different level. And any person out there like who's really out of their ego and in their heart, any man will look at a woman and go, she brings life to the home. She is everything. And I'm like, it's that energy of honoring the fact that like life creation and that feeling and that energy of what we are, it's unmatched. And it's not something that is ego driven. It's not a power driven hierarchical thing where it's like, we're better than men. We're more powerful. And it's not negative. It's not cool, we're more powerful, so we're going to use that. And like, it's not how it is. It's just the power of creativity. It's so encompassing, and how we approach things when we're in our heart, not when we're in our ego, not when we're in fear or scarcity or anything like that. Like feminine leadership is a big thing for me. I've studied it for many years, where if you can really tune into it, we look at everybody. We don't just look at ourselves and point A to point B linear looking things, right? I think that for me with feminine leadership and like how we operate differently, we think of ourselves, we think of our partners, we think of the kids, we think of the community, we think of how things are going to function for everybody. And it's a complete synergy. We know that just like nature, there is an ecosystem and we naturally operate that. And some people will be like, well, that's how we were conditioned. No, like even how our body is and how we operate in alignment with nature and the way that we know how everything synergistically goes together. And for me, it's just about being like, okay, well, if we can all get back to that and really come from a heart-centered place, that's fucking beautiful. Sorry, I don't know if I can swear.
Oh,
but I'm
no.
like,
Girl, I constantly drop the F-bomb, so I'm like, yeah, we're good here.
yeah, and I for me, it's just like, why not? There's so many people that want to push against, and I'm like, why? It's beautiful though, and it's creative and it's flowing and things are still getting done and we're moving along, and like, we're not so in the feminine that we don't honor the masculine. We honor both. It's just one of the biggest things that I always say to people is like, a feminine based business, a feminine based life is a freedom based life. A masculine based life is a safety, security based life. And that chokes the life out of things. We need to have it, but it doesn't need to be the basis for everything. Mm-hmm. We need to look at it from a feminine perspective, which is a freedom-based perspective, and build from there, and then figure out what safety and security brings into the freedom-based perspective. So I could go on and on about this.
And I think there is, we are completely speaking the same language. It's like I had so many conversations on the podcast and behind the scenes of this idea of black and white. It's only just masculine, it's only just feminine. It's like, can we get out of this where it's like the magic happens in the gray zone, the magic happens in that synergy, the magic happens in that energy exchange, where it's like, I'm looking at it out of a personal perspective, having a man that can show up and give that safety space for me to feel safe stepping into my home, and then being able to go out and just play, try, go, do, knowing exactly that I have a safe place to go to. It's this, I think it's that play with energy. It's that synergy of everything where it's like, it's not an either or. We don't have to work against each other.
Well, okay, so let me say this too, because I get like, I feel this so much. And for me, if you come at it from a perspective of like safe, it chokes the life out of things. But if you come at it from a freedom-based perspective, play comes back in, and the masculine loves it. I always say the masculine is the epitome of safety and it seeks freedom. The feminine is the epitome of freedom and it seeks safety. And if you come at it from a masculine perspective, I'm not saying like we were just talking, it's like, you're not saying screw the masculine and like you don't get a say. That's not what the feminine version of life is. If you approach it from a feminine perspective, you're approaching it from a freedom-based perspective, and what you build goes into a freedom-based vision. Versus if you approach it from a masculine perspective, it's security and safety, and that type of like, it can feel very constricting, and you're like, ooh, okay, yeah, that probably like we're overworking, and that's what we're seeing a lot in the world. And so it doesn't just honor the feminine by coming from a feminine-based perspective. It actually feeds the masculine. And that's what I wish, like I don't know if there's a lot of men that listen to like your podcast.
From the numbers, I'm like looking at my numbers, it's actually interesting. On audio, we are definitely way more on the female side. YouTube has been interesting. It's kind of like the 2/3 to 1/3. So It's nice to see, at least from the data that I'm getting, it's nice to see that there are men out there too to join this conversation, because I think it's a conversation we all should have. I just simply focused on having a lot of these conversations with women because we are finally having these conversations. We are finally getting the permission slip to go be creative, to go with the flow, to be like, it doesn't have to be this way. It's okay that you don't feel right in this situation because it doesn't align with you.
Yeah, and I think that right now we're seeing a really big shift in, like, there's a lot of wounded masculine coming up. A lot.
Yes. And I love that you use the word wounded masculinity I happened to record an episode earlier where the toxic masculinity came up.
Yeah.
And that's actually where I had long conversations with our mutual friend, Matthew Riven, where it's like, one of his big things is like, there is no toxic masculinity.
Yeah.
It's toxic or it's masculinity. So I love how you use language and say, yeah, it's wounded. And it's not... Some men show up in their pain. It doesn't necessarily mean it's, quote, toxic masculinity. That's a whole nother level, that toxicity.
That, to me, like, toxicity is like the far end of like, we're harming one another. And like, I try to think of it as like a spectrum. And for me, and I if you want to finish what you were saying, like, I definitely want to, let's dive in. But I sometimes the word slips out because we were just talking.
Yeah.
I'm like, no,
and it's everywhere. I'm like, we gave a word to something and it helps us have that conversation. So I get how it came together.
Yes.
I think now is the time to make the distinction.
Yes.
And take it to a next level.
Well, yeah. And like, toxic masculinity does exist. Toxic femininity does exist. But to me, toxic, and I'm very big about words. Like, my friends call me a word witch because like I can take words like hustle and be like, that's not actually what that means. And because we've taken the word and made it mean something that it actually doesn't mean, our bodies know what it means and our minds are trying to make it mean something else. And I'm like, stop doing that. This is why I don't believe in hard work. I believe in the right kind of effort. Hard work is not required. The right kind of effort is. It's one of my integrity statements in my business. It's how I run my culture. It's how I have my team check me because words matter. And so there is toxic masculinity. It's just not what we think of in terms of toxic masculinity. There's toxic where it's harming women. And I mean like harming. There's toxic masculinity where it's gone to the point where you are a raw nerve and you're blowing up. That doesn't mean that it doesn't require healing. It doesn't mean that they don't have compassion, nothing like that. But there is a toxicity to it. Just like anything where there's too much of it can turn toxic. And then there's like wounded masculine. And the wounded masculine, it's in all of us. It's not just men. It's like, of course we have that. And then there's like healthy masculine where it's like, cool, you've integrated it and you've integrated a little bit of your healthy feminine. Amazing. And then there's healthy feminine, there's wounded feminine, there's toxic feminine, and all that entire spectrum exists inside of every single one of us. And when I talk about feminine energy and with people, I'm like, I am a feminine cored individual, 80% feminine, 20% masculine. You're a masculine cored man, 80% masculine, 20% feminine. I'm making up these numbers, but I'm trying to get people to like, just understand that. And I'm like, so I need to approach my life from a feminine-based perspective because otherwise I'm not honoring myself. I want you to operate in like your intuitiveness of being a masculine-based perspective, but that doesn't mean you get to ignore the 20% of your feminine. In fact, if you think about it, this is why I always say, I'm like, I'm in this now, so I'm just like gonna go. But this is why I always say to people, I go, feminine sets the standard, the masculine leads from it in everything. That's the basis for Wildly Satisfied in the media platform. Because for me, if you have a masculine standard, even as a masculine man, if you have a masculine standard, it's safety and security, and that can be choking and toxic, and it can be really bad. But if you, even as a man, you honor your feminine and you go, I'm still a masculine cored man, healthy masculine, and I'm honoring my feminine. The feminine even sets the standard in you as a man. And I really want to be clear about this because the reason why we have toxic masculinity or wounded masculinity is because you're not honoring your emotions. And those emotions, which are feminine and intuitive, those emotions are literally, they are the ones that are setting the standard for everything in your life, whether you want to admit it or not. They're why you can't have relationships. They're why you can't talk about feeling, whatever it is. But if you go and you honor and realize that your feminine actually does set the standard inside of you, but your masculine leads from it, you're gonna have a better life. That doesn't mean that you need to be a feminine man, okay? You can still be a masculine cored man, and it's amazing. It's just recognizing that even an 80% masculine, 20% feminine man, your feminine still sets the standard. And you rallying against it is why we have so much toxicity right now.
I need to get for my editor and everybody that's watching live. We need to get a mic drop in here. We really need to get not just an audio but a visual mic drop in here. I'm sitting over here. I'm like, yeah.
It's when you see it, you can't unsee it. Like when you recognize that as a man, like I want men to be happy. This isn't like a rallying cry where women need to rule the world and be a feminist or anything like that. And that's all okay, but like that's also wounded sometimes. And I want men to be happy. I look at my dad and I'm like, Dad, I just want you to be happy. I want everybody to be wildly satisfied. Dishonoring the feminine inside of you is doing you no favors. And it hasn't. And you know what? Look at the world because we've done it. We've dishonored the feminine. And that's everything that is going wrong is because we've dishonored the feminine. And now the feminine is like, nope, I'm taking the standard back. You guys don't set the standard. The masculine energy does not set the standard. And honestly, if you think about it in terms of like relationships too, the relationships that we have, so many people are confused because they're like, men lead. I want you to lead. I want you to lead. And the men are like, I'm leading, but then they're not leading in the way that's safe and all the things, right?
But you also see the other kind of this guilty of that one where it's like, I didn't allow to be led.
Exactly. And that's the thing right there, that word, allow. The feminine sets the standard. Okay. So whether better or worse, if you're in a relationship right now and you're like, I don't know why he's treating me like this, and like let's say that's like a random one, right? Like he's not calling me back, and like I don't know why he's not texting me. It doesn't seem like he cares, right? When you're starting to date someone, well, you set the standard that he had more power in the relationship, and he was supposedly the one that was setting the standard, and you didn't realize that you actually set the standard because you allowed it. And it's like when a woman we allow, even physically, I'll give you an example that's like the female body. We allow the man into our body. When we don't, it's assault. They don't allow us into their body. We allow it. We set the standard. And so when it comes to business, when it comes to anything, when it comes to relationships, in the relationship that you have, it's like, where did you set the standard where you allowed that? It's not that it's your fault. Let's be real. It's not a fault conversation. It's just you're now changing the standard, and he's got to get with that. It's yeah.
Yeah, I'm like that was a lot of my work where it's like I had to take my own responsibility. Where it's like I didn't have the communication. I didn't set the standards. I allowed things in my life that I didn't want in my life, but I allowed them to. So it's like had to take a really close look at myself on that one and clean things up and work things through. And there is nothing better when you get to the point, and so at least for me, it's like I've done a lot of work by myself where I realized I needed to step away. And I just needed to come back to me, figure out who I actually am, what do I care about. External influences needed to be silenced, and I just needed to come back to me and did the work of everything that came up through that. And then was lucky enough to find a partner that is becoming that activator, where it's like there is behaviors in him and behaviors in me where we activate each other, and we have the conversations about it where I literally can say, oh, I know where this is coming from, done my studies, I know exactly which old story you just activated. And I can say, it's like none of your thing. Right now, I want to smack you over the head. You are right now the point of my emotions, even though I know it's not you. And being able to have these conversations and take my personal growth to a whole new level, having that safety of being able to have the conversations, being able for me to actually allow those conversations and have those words, I'm like, oh my God, yes.
Well, and that right there is the feminine. It's conversations, it's emotions, it's all these things where it's like, cool, you set the standard in your relationship that emotions are welcome here. You set the standard in your relationship that you're allowed to talk about it. It's conversation. It's so beautiful because when you really understand the feminine and the masculine and how we operate together, when we honor each other and how we intuitively operate, it's even more amazing. And so like the feminine setting the standard and the masculine leading from it, a lot of wounded masculine might look at that and be like, I'm not going to let her run no, like we don't need to come at it from that perspective. when the feminine sets the standard and it's beautiful and masculine's like, yes, and they lead from it, they know, they feel clear, they're supported, and then they are fed because she feels safe and she can be free and she can open. And then it feeds as the masculine. I'm obviously talking about heterosexual relationships in this context, but like he is fed as well. It's honestly in the opposite direction. It doesn't always work that way. And that's what we've seen a lot is that like when the masculine sets the standard, the feminine does not feel free a lot of the time. It's actually way more, the word that keeps coming up is like choking. Like it feels like you're getting the life choked out of you. And I mean that figuratively. And so it's like the freedom and our energy and our play and our creativity, it's big and it's powerful. And like the truly healthy masculine is like, yes, oh my God, like she fills the home. Her energy is beautiful. And so I love that please let that be what you want your life to be, because you want your life to be that, both men and women, and whatever type of couple that you have with the energy. So,
question: Where do you see the future of, or hope to be the future of, feminine leadership, female leadership?
So in general, I feel like that's two questions. So in general,
it was kind of like this. Okay, where am I taking this? Because one is a future prognosis where you think it's gonna go, and it also could be where would you wish it's going.
Yeah, and so for me, for Wildly Satisfied, I'll say this really quick. That's the home for me where the feminine gets to understand itself. That's why I built that media platform. But for me, with like feminine leadership overall, right now we are in a time where finally it's like there's no going back. Everybody's gonna try. We're seeing that they're trying, and it's like there's no going back. And so the feminine is finally understanding the place that we have in this world and how we operate in alignment with nature. And so when I think about feminine leadership, it's like, cool, we're going forward. We're going to release the way that the masculine runs the world. And there's going to be different models and ways of life that we are now shown that we can go, oh my God, I can honor how I operate. And the dynamic is going to shift. I think that on a large scale, whether you're in a corporate environment, whether you are in the home, whatever it is, there's going to be a lot more models and ways of life shown to you so you can honor how you operate intuitively, whether that's the relationship that you want, the business that you want, the corporate job that you want, your identity, whatever it is. I love that too, because that's when I went to another culture, I was like, oh my God, this is a different model and a different way of life. I'm going to honor that. And so on a large scale, we're going to see a lot more individualism and different models for people to understand themselves better. And the customization is going to be phenomenal. We lived in a world where it was like, well, everybody gets shoved into this model and system. No child left behind in the US, but every child was left behind. Like there wasn't a lot of honoring how this person learns versus how this person learns. Like there's going to be such individualism and customization that you're in business, you're really going to see a lot of the strategies, and you're already seeing it, fall away because they're masculine strategies or they're wounded masculine strategies. And now we're going to see a lot more of the feminine. And I'm going to just call this right now. It's happening right now. A lot of the people we have in power right now, there's not a lot of women in feminine ways of being. So people are like, well, I don't know how that looks like in operations, right? In terms of business strategy and everything. The men don't know how women and how the feminine can operate and have all these things because they will never be able to operate like that. And what I mean by that is my dad always said to me, he goes, Taylor, women are more powerful, and when they realize that, the entire world will change. Hence, it's happening. And I go, Dad, what do you mean? He said, a woman can walk into a room and all eyes turn to her and go, I'm going to take whoever I want home. There's this power and this energy to women. And we can sit here and receive gifts, receive ways And like, we don't have to try and pursue. That's the masculine. The masculine pursues. So in business, we've been taught pursuing ways of business, and the masculine doesn't understand to sit back and be like, no, we can just receive. So the thing that we're seeing a lot is like a lot of feminine energy entrepreneurs are sitting here going, oh yeah, well, I just made like, I don't know, $1 million this month and I barely worked. And the masculine's like, that's a scam. I don't understand. And I'm like, because you won't understand, because it's an entirely different way of operating. Does that mean that every feminine entrepreneur? No, some are scams, 1000%. Like, don't blindly believe everybody, please. But we're going to start seeing in feminine leadership, like a lot of what we have in leadership right now, even female leadership still has an essence of masculinity, and it's going to start falling away. There's going to be a lot of people that are out of integrity, and they're falling away. And so it's really a time for you to look at and be like, what's actually in integrity from a freedom-based perspective, how I want to live my life? How do I want to build my business? What's the model that works for me that does not burn me out? Like, there's going to be so much that's going to change. And when it comes to feminine leadership, it is community-based. It is abundance. It is curiosity. It is all of these feelings, because it's all about freedom and everybody gets a piece. And there's not a limit. It's unlimited because it's creative energy. Remember, we were talking about women, like, we are creative life force. So it's limitless. And there's going to be some skepticism, but like, we're going to have a new paradigm and a new dynamic and new models and new ways. And it's like, cool, you just get to find which way works for you. I hope that answered that part of it, at least.
I have a feeling you're going to be back on the podcast here at some point.
I'm down. I love this.
For everybody that is ready to dive deeper, to go learn more about you, to go learn more about living a life in flow, where can they find you?
You can find me on Instagram, obviously, for Wildly Satisfied, or Wildly Intuitive, which is more of my personal account. And then my platform is wildlysatisfiedmedia.com or wildlysatisfied.com. I also have a quiz that is currently in process. It'll be live by the time this goes out, which is all about where you are in your feminine your feminine entrepreneurship journey, what you need to focus on, and what you really need to put your energy towards, because we have a lot of people telling us a lot of things on how we need to operate. And this quiz is really just like, hey, you're actually in this position right now. Here's the healthy and unhealthy habits. Here's the healthy and unhealthy, like, ego side of things and energy side of things. And here's what you actually need to focus your energy on. Even though you might think it's this thing, it's actually this. And so I'm really excited to just be able to help feminine entrepreneurs, because my biggest thing with Wildly Satisfied is like, there's a lot of money in the world. There's a lot of pleasure in the world. Let's get practical about it and freaking do it, because we don't have time to screw around anymore. Like, let's go. Like, that's the biggest thing for me. Let's have fun and really just put money in the hands of so many people, because there are things we want to change in the world, and it's time that we start doing it and we get to have fun while we do it and not burn out, because I have no interest in living a life I have to recover from anymore. So,
and as you all know, links are going to be in the description wherever you read, watch, or listen. And Taylor, if you need a beta tester to make sure technology is playing along, I am more than happy to be the first one going through the quiz, because I'm going to be right there.
Absolutely. I'm so excited.
And as always, everybody listening, watching, or reading, make sure you hit that follow button so you don't miss any other amazing episodes coming up here at She Is a Leader. Taylor, so much thank you for coming on today. And I know I'm going to be soon again in your Instagram DMs.
Absolutely. I love this. I love the conversation we have. This was fantastic. I will have a million conversations, because this was just so fun. It's just amazing. So thank you so much. I love it.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Bye.